Hi, boys. Welcome to the first Daddy Cast of 2022. Ancient World Echoes, Week 13. A Tale from Ancient Greece. The Curse of Echo. In the flowery groves of Helicon, Echo was once a fair nymph, who, hand in hand with her sisters, sported along the green lawns and by the side of the mountain streams. Among them all, her feet were the lightest, and her laugh the merriest, and in the telling of tales not one of them could touch her. So, if ever any among them were plotting mischief in their hearts, they would say to her, Echo, thou weaver of words, go thou and sit beside Hera in her bower, and beguile her with a tale, that she come not forth and find us. See thou make it a long one, Echo, and we will give thee a garland to twine in thy hair. And Echo would laugh a gay laugh which rang through the grove. What will you do when she tires of my tales? She asked. When that time comes, we shall see, said they. So with another laugh she would trip away and cast herself on the grass at Hera's feet. When Hera looked upon Echo, her stern brow would relax, and she would smile upon her and stroke her hair. What hast thou come for now, thou sprite? She would ask. I had a great longing to talk with thee, great Hera, she would answer, and I have a tale, a wondrous new tale to tell thee. My tales are as many as the risings of the sun, Echo, and each one of them as long as an old man's beard. The day is yet young, mother, she would say, and the tales I have told thee before are as mud which is trampled underfoot by the side of the one I shall tell thee now. Go to, then, said Hera, and if it pleases me, I will listen to thee. So Echo would sit upon the grass at Hera's feet, and with her eyes fixed upon her face she would tell her tale. She had the gift of words, and, moreover, she had seen and heard many strange things which she alone could tell of. These she would weave into romances, adding to them as best pleased her, or taking from them at will. For the best of tale-tellers are those who can lie, but who mingle in with their lies some grains of truth which they have picked from their own experience. And Hera would forget her watchfulness and her jealousies, and listen entranced while the magic of Echo's words made each scene live before her eyes. Meanwhile the nymphs would sport to their heart's content and never fear her anger. But at last came the black day of reckoning, when Hera found out the prank which Echo had played upon her so long, and the fire of her wrath flashed forth like lightning. The gift whereby thou hast deceived me shall be thine no more, she cried. Henceforward thou shalt be dumb till someone else has spoken, and then, even if thou wilt, thou shalt not hold thy tongue, but must needs repeat once more the last words that have been spoken. Alas, alas, cried the nymphs in chorus. Alas, alas, cried Echo after them, and could say no more, though she longed to speak and beg Hera to forgive her. So did it come to pass that she lost her voice and could only say that which the others put in her mouth, whether she wished it or no. Now it chanced one day that the young Narcissus strayed away from his companions in the hunt, and when he tried to find them, he only wandered further and lost his way upon the lonely heights of Helicon. He was now in the bloom of his youth, nearing manhood, and as fair as a flower in spring, and all who saw him straightway loved him and longed for him. But though his face was smooth and soft as a maiden's, his heart was as hard as steel, and while many loved him and sighed for him, they could kindle no answering flame in his breast, but he would spurn them and treat them with scorn, and go on his way, nothing caring. When he was born, the blind seer Teiresias had prophesied concerning him, so long as he sees not himself, he shall live and be happy. And his words came true, for Narcissus cared for neither man nor woman, but only for his own pleasure. And because he was so fair that all who saw him loved him for his beauty, he found it easy to get from them what he would. But he himself knew nothing of love, and therefore but a little of grief. For love at the best brings joy and sorrow hand in hand, and if unreturned, it brings nothing but pain. Now when the nymphs saw Narcissus wandering alone through the woods, they too loved him for his beauty, and they followed him wherever he went. But because he was mortal, they were shy of him, and would not show themselves, but hid behind the trees and rocks, so that he should not see them. And amongst the others, Echo followed him too. At last, when he found he had really wandered astray, he began to shout for one of his companions. "Ho there, where art thou?" he cried. "Where art thou?" answered Echo. When he heard the voice, he stopped and listened, but he could hear nothing more. Then he called again, "I am here, in the wood. Narcissus!" "In the wood, Narcissus!" said she. "Come hither!" he cried. "Come hither!" she answered. Wondering at the strange voice which answered him, he looked all about, but could see no one. "Art thou close at hand?" he asked. "Close at hand," answered Echo. Wondering the more at seeing no one, he went forward in the direction of the voice. Echo, when she found he was coming towards her, fled further, so that when he next called her, her voice sounded far away. But wherever she was, he still followed after her, and he saw that he would not let her escape from wherever she hid. If he called, she had to answer and so show him her hiding place. By now, they had come to an open space in the trees where the green lawn sloped down to a clear pool in the hollow. Here by the margin of the water she stood with her back to the tall, nodding bulrushes, and as Narcissus came out of the tree she wrung her hands, and the salt tears dropped from her eyes, for she loved him and longed to speak to him, and yet she could not say a word. When he saw her, he stopped. "Art thou she who calls me?" he asked. "Who calls me?" she answered. "I have told thee, Narcissus," he said. "Narcissus!" she cried, and held out her arms to him. "Who art thou?" he asked. "Who art thou?" said she. "Have I not told thee?" he said impatiently. "Narcissus!" "Narcissus!" she said again, and still held out her hands beseechingly. "Tell me," he cried, "who art thou, and why dost thou call me?" "Why dost thou call me?" said she. At this he grew angry. "Maiden, whoever thou art, thou hast led me a pretty dance through the woods, and now thou dost nothing but mock me." "Thou dost nothing but mock me," said she. At this he grew yet more angry, and began to abuse her, but every word of abuse that he spoke she hurled back at him again. At last, tired out with his wanderings and with anger, he threw himself on the grass by the pool, and would not look at her nor speak to her again. For a time she stood beside him, weeping, and longing to speak to him and explain, but never a word could she utter. So at last, in her misery, she left him, and went and hid herself behind a rock close by. After a while, when his anger had cooled down somewhat, Narcissus remembered he was very thirsty, and noticing for the first time the clear pool beside him, he bent over the edge of the bank to drink. As he held out his hand to the water, he saw looking up towards him a face which was the fairest face he had ever looked on, and his heart, which never yet had known what love was, at last was set on fire by the face in the pool. With a sigh, he held out both his arms towards it, and the figure also held out two arms to him. An echo from the rock answered back his sigh. When he saw the figure stretching out towards him and heard the sigh, he thought that his love was returned, and he bent down towards the water and whispered, "I love thee." "I love thee," answered Echo from the rock. At these words he bent down further and tried to clasp the figure in his arms, but as he did so it vanished away. The surface of the pool was covered with ripples, and he found he was clasping empty water to his breast. So he drew back and waited a while, thinking he had been over hasty. In time the ripples died away, and the face appeared again, as clear as before, looking up at him longingly from the water. Once again he bent toward it and tried to clasp it, and once again it fled from his embrace. Time after time he tried, and always the same thing happened, and at last he gave up in despair and sat looking down into the water, with the teardrops falling from his eyes, and the figure in the pool wept too, and looked up at him with a look of longing and despair. The longer he looked, the more fiercely did the flame of love burn in his breast, till at length he could bear it no more, but determined to reach the desire of his heart or die. So for the last time he leaned forward, and when he found that once again he was clasping the empty water, he threw himself from the bank into the pool, thinking that in the depths at any rate he would find his love. But he found nothing but death among the weeds and stones of the pool, and knew not that it was his own face he loved reflected in the water below him. Thus were the words of the prophet fulfilled. So long as he sees not himself, he shall live and be happy. Echo, peeping out from the rock, saw all that had happened, and when Narcissus cast himself into the pool, she rushed forward, all too late to stop him. When she found she could not save him, she cast herself on the grass by the pool and wept, till her flesh and her bones wasted away with weeping, and nothing but her voice remained. And the curse that was on her. So to this day she lives, a formless voice, haunting the rocks and caves and vaulted halls. Herself no man has seen since the day Narcissus saw her wringing her hands for love of him beside the nodding bulrushes, and no man ever shall see again. But her voice we have all heard, repeating our words, and when we thought that no one was by. And though now she will say whatever we bid her, if once the curse were removed, the cry of her soul would be, Narcissus, Narcissus, my love, come back to me. By the side of the clear brown pool on the grass that Echo had watered with her tears, there sprang up a sweet scented flower with a pure white face and a crown of gold. And to this day, in many a land, men call that flower Narcissus, after the lad who, for love of his own fair face, was drowned in the waters of Helicon.